Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very, very well. Today we have got an episode around product-based business, which is not something, this isn't a podcast that's sort of dedicated to product-based businesses, but I thought it was an interesting episode and a one that is useful because many people who I work with do have a product-based business or wish to start one. So we're going to talk through sort of what to do if you're launching a product-based business. How do you make a product-based business work in the landscape of business that is 2024 and beyond? The world is a very different place from what it was, and the world of e-commerce is very different, and product-based business and the success of that is vastly different to how it has been for many years. One episode previously, I mentioned, I can't remember what it was it a Q&A, or was it, there was some sort of episode where we talked very briefly around, I was saying that I think it's very difficult to start a product-based business that resonates and that hits and that is successful in today's market, and that it is a real challenge and not everybody. I think I was basically talking about how it's a lot easier, in my opinion, for a service-based business to thrive than it is for a product-based business. However, with that, it's not impossible. And it's not something that you shouldn't do. And it's not that I'm the person that's like, do not start a product-based business. However, it is a lot of work and it is very, very specific in how you achieve success with it. And so today I want to talk you through some indicators, some pointers, some things for you to look at around what to do if you are launching a product-based business and how can you make it a huge, huge success. So get comfy. I feel like hopefully this won't be a super long episode. I will try and make it as short as possible. And I've really tried to pick out some key areas that will hopefully be impactful for you to go and implement on and look at and kind of question yourself and modify it to suit you and to make sure that you get the most out of the episode. So the first thing, if you are launching a product-based business, and for anyone who's wondering, like, what is a product-based business? So that is something where people are purchasing something, a physical item. They are transacting money with you, and then you are going to send them something, is typically how it works, or they're going to buy something in store from you, or there's some sort of exchange of a good. It's not something like a service where you're selling, it could be online and, you know, you deliver it virtually or something like that. This is a product where it is a sort of physical being. I'm also not referring to digital products. That is a separate thing, and they sit more in services. I am talking about a physical product that you can hold in your hands, or is tactile, or that you can eat, or has some sort of physicality to it. And that is a product-based business. And the reason that it's important to separate the two is that the key indicators of two different businesses are vastly different, product and service, and how you sell is different, how you market is different. Obviously, there are key parts of business that transact across the board, and there's parts of it that are the same, but there are huge differences of running two separate ones. It's very, very important to clarify that. So if you've got an idea, or maybe you're launching a product-based business, or you've already launched one, your product needs to be exquisitely good. Product in 2024 is so critically important. There has never been more choice. There's never been more competition. There's never been more options. There's never been kind of more access to goods than ever before, in the sense of, once upon a time, you would only be able to buy the clothes that were in the local kind of boutique of wherever you lived, and that was the competition of the other brands in the boutique. Now, there's obviously millions of options that people can access, both physically, both online. They can find inspiration. Like, the idea of quality of a product is extremely important. Now, that does not mean that you have to build a luxury brand. It doesn't mean that you have to have a luxury high-priced product. But what I'm saying is you've got to know your product. So you've got to really know your product. You've got to really understand where you want it to sit in the category that you're in. And you also need to be very, very confident in why people are going to buy your product over somebody else's. So spending time really making sure the product good is a huge part of a product-based business. Like, there is no point in you cutting down time with this. So don't try and launch with something that you're not happy with. Don't launch with something that you're like, oh, it's not great. I'm not saying it has to be perfect, but you need to spend the time to make sure the product's right. The other thing you then look at is your niche. And in 2024, a niche that you sit within with a product-based business is hugely important if you want to grow the revenue of it fast. So in terms of your marketing efforts, in terms of paid marketing, in terms of how you build a brand, in terms of how you grow and get community, the niche market is going to allow you to do so in a much more affordable and more effective way than going for like broad. You can go broad later, but for now you need to pick something that is in it sits within a category. So what I mean by that is if you create a product that anybody could use, I've got a great idea actually. Glasses. Let's just say glasses. Maybe you want to provide glasses. Now, glasses can be a universal experience. You know, children to any age group, to any walk of life, to any stage of life, like anything. Glasses are something people buy. You are much better off picking some sort of niche within glasses. So maybe it's that you're creating glasses for the busy professional who lives in X place. Maybe you're creating glasses for someone who is a farmer and who is outdoors and who, you know, has various different requirements for their glasses. Those two different groups of people are vastly different. And yes, somebody like Specsavers serves both of them, but you are not going to be Specsavers. So you need to really refine what and who are you trying to access in which niche. You can then build outwards later on if that is necessary. So obviously pick a niche where there's a decent enough market size. I'm not saying pick something where there's like hardly anybody in the country or in the world who's going to pick that, but you've got to be very clear in how you're going to sell. Because if you're going to sell to farmers, you can create a product and you can market around a whole way like that that's going to immediately grab their attention, that isn't going to grab their attention if you're marketing to the kind of a professional who's cool and wants a real fashionable glasses at an affordable price. So really understanding your niche. Now, in terms of how do you then, let's just say the product's right, you've got the understanding of where the positioning is in the market and what the niche is. You've then got your brand, which is, I would argue, the most important thing beyond the product. Like, let's just say the product's right. The brand is the thing that is going to move the business. And many people will argue that, you know, you can have an absolutely shit product. And to be fair, if the marketing is so, like, if the brand is so elusive and the brand is connecting with people on such a level that they will buy it regardless. We've seen that happen with merch, yeah, when people just bring out generic merch and people are all over it because it's like it's a brand and they want to be associated with it. So your brand is so important, and spend money on it. Like, you're gonna have to really invest, in my opinion, in the brand. It needs to look a certain way. It needs to have strategy built underneath it. Like, it has to be solid. Like, if you're gonna do a product-based business, I personally feel like the brand is so crucially important. Like, yes, service based, it's important, but you can kind of get away with it for a certain period of time without product. That there's no getting away from it, in my opinion. You have to get that brand nailed on straight out of the gate. To accompany that with this idea of brand, we've also then got community. And in 2024, you must find a way of, yes, you have a product-based business, but what is the community element to it? Where do the two collide? How do you bring community to what you do? So, for example, if you are someone who sells gym wear, you have a running club potentially, and the running club builds community through your brand. Maybe it's that you, I don't know, sell wine, and you're going to build kind of wine and boot clubs into part of your strategy, and you build community that way. Now, it doesn't have to be physical in-person events as ways of building community. Those were just some examples. But you have to figure out what sort of community do you want to build? How are you going to build it? What layers does it have? Where do you want it to be nurtured? How big do you want the community to be? Who's inside of that community? But you must look at what is the community element of your product-based business. Now, depending on the size of the business you want to build, and depending on like where it sort of sits in what market, another piece of the pie is technology. You've got to look at, where does tech come into what you do? Because technology and AI is so critically important for, you know, so many people and businesses. But you've got a real chance to incorporate technology into it in a way that is going to support you, support sales, support customers, but also give you an edge. So, for example, for this, I'm thinking, if you had a beauty brand, for example, is there a way for people to find the right shade of beauty product with you through their phone, through the camera? What tech can you use for that? What AI can you use for that? There's many examples where you can incorporate technology and artificial intelligence into the kind of bigger picture of your business and sit as a kind of core differentiator for the business. So what role does that have? You then also need to really decide on your pricing strategy. And your pricing strategy has got to be so clear. Like with your pricing strategy, it has to be way more specific than it is for service-based business. You need to know your numbers, you need to know your profit, your net profit, your gross profit, you need to know minimum order quantities, you need to know how that will change the price of things, you need to understand what is the tolerance built into the risk of all of things, because with product-based business, the risk is way higher, in my opinion. What are you going to do when there's a complete disaster with stock? It's stuck somewhere. What happens when Royal Mail or a different delivery company lose all of your parcels? Like, how does that work? And as someone who has been through this, it's torture. It is real torture when all the various things happen that you're like, oh, I really hope it doesn't happen to me, and then it does. So, like, what is your pricing strategy? And that must take the time to make sure it all makes sense. You have to understand that. And do not start off on a pricing strategy that's based upon fear or lack, or this idea of we're going to build the business on this pricing strategy and then we'll shift it to a profitable one later down the line. That is, especially in this day and age, I think you're really risky for doing that if you're going to do it. You need to know your numbers and you need to really figure out what makes sense. How much money are you going to make in that first drop if you launch something and you can sell it out? If you sell 50%, how much are you going to make? Like, how does that fund the rest of the business? Your pricing and your kind of financial planning as a product-based business owner has to be way more in depth at making sure that your cash flow can constantly fund the business, because you're going to be in a position where there's just cash flow, cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. You're paying for, stock, or you're paying ahead for this thing and that thing. And it just like feels like your bank account's like fill up, down, fill up, down. It's like, it's very, very tricky if you don't know your numbers and you're not very clear on those. Leading on nicely to this is this whole idea of launch models and what model are you going to use for selling. And I really think we've seen in the past sort of 5-10 years that this idea of using launch models really work for product-based businesses. And what I mean by that is, like, you'll have experienced this yourself where you join a wait list, there's then a certain amount of the product released, people buy it, it then sells out, then they have another wait list, and they keep doing this launching. And for some people, it sells out within half an hour. For some people, it sells out within a month. But they do this launch-based model, and it works for a lot of businesses. And I think it's good. There's some businesses I think, no, don't do it. But for most product-based businesses, I think is great. Like, it's a really good option. It helps them build demand, because there's so much marketing-wise you can then do with the kind of urgency and the demand that you then sort of create in yourself. And it's a really interesting way of you managing your cash flow. Like, there's a lot of benefits to it from the business perspective as well, in the sense of you sort of getting rid of all the product you've got at once, you're not having to pay for loads of money in fulfillment centers and loads of money trying to store stock and move stuff, and it helps to kind of move things through. So a launch model is a great idea, and it's something that I would really look at doing if you're in a position of launching a product-based business. The other piece I would encourage you to think about is rewards. How are you going to reward and encourage repeat business? Because that's what you need to do in 2024. You need a community of people who are going to come back and buy from you time and time and time again. You do not want to have the cost that is excruciatingly high for most people at the minute of acquiring new customers consistently every single day. Yes, you're probably going to do that anyway, but if you can then build this beautiful buffer of people who return to the business and advocate for the business and keep the business moving forward, you will be in a very good position to grow well. So decide on, do you have a reward program? What is the kind of incentive for them to have a repeat business with you? What is the joy, the like secret sauce of the business? Like, when I'm talking about rewards and repeat business, I'm not saying that you have to have this almighty reward system where you're giving people points or free things. It's even just down to, what about the packaging makes people want to do that again? What about the packaging makes it ideal for gifting, so therefore they're going to gift when they next think they need a gift? Like, what is it about their experience that they've just gone through as a purchaser that then means that they're going to recommend it to a friend, or then means they're going to be like, yes, okay, I'm going to go back to that? It doesn't have to be really like serious things in terms of like big strategy pieces, because I know for some of you, like, that's not going to be possible if you're in the midst of trying to fund everything else. But it's like, how do we make sure that your marketing activity is actually set up to support people who have bought from you before and who are figuring out, do I want that in another color, or do we need that, or am I actually going to send the link to someone? Well, is it easy for them to do that? How does that work? Like, just really having a thought out journey post buy-in is very important. Now, going back to community, I want to just touch on this idea of a consumer-driven brand. So in 2024, if you're running a product-based business, consumer-driven brand building and product development is very, very crucial, and it is really important, and it's so key for ensuring that you keep people wanting more and you keep people drawn into the vision. A great business that is doing this well, and I'm going to try and bring some examples up towards the end of the episode for us to discuss, but a great business who does this is Trinny London. If you know Trinny Woodhull, she's an incredible entrepreneur, and she has a beauty business, which is a makeup business. She is very consumer driven. She's so tapped into her audience. She's built this incredible community. To be fair, all the things we just talked about, she's really hit the nail on the head with most of it. She's really pioneered in that. And I think the business is now worth sort of multiple hundreds of millions of pounds. But that is so driven through consumer behavior, and it's driven through community involvement, and it's driven through feedback. And that pays her back time and time again. Now, does she put a hell of a lot of time into making it, to building her community and nurturing it? Yes, every single day for the last however many years. I mean, I'm talking a hell of a lot of years. But it's a great example of where you can be a really consumer-driven brand and that's going to work for you well. We're going to just move on because I don't want to get too carried away with examples. We will come back to examples. Market disruption is something we need to talk about. So if you are starting a product-based business, you really have to understand, are you being a market disruptor? Are you just adding to the market? And where is your place within the market? So this is slightly different from niche. This isn't about like, what are you actually entering for? So market disruption is a way that successful product-based brands, many of whom that you look at and you love and you enjoy and you think about when I mention a product-based business, have come to kind of success in the last few years because of market disruption. They've taken a kind of boring industry and they've turned it into something fun again. They've disrupted it. They've created a newness to it. They've added a brand to it. They've done something that shifts things up. If you want examples for this, let's think. Lick Paint, if you know those. They've really changed up the paint market. We've got Pookie Lighten. Lighten was an industry, a sector of homewares where like people were just not really that like, okay, you've got to buy light. Now it's like people have got lights on their wish boards, or they're asking wish lists, or they're asking it for birthday. Can they have a portable light from Pookie? That's a real market disruptor. You've also got Heck sausages, or Heck is a brand, I think they're now called. They initially started with sausages. I know they've got a whole different section now, but like sausages weren't particularly cool. They weren't particularly trendy. When they launched, they really changed the way people looked at a sausage. They had a chicken sausage. They had this different way of looking at sausages. It's like odd. I suppose another one is proper corn. The popcorn is an industry that has a massive, huge profit margin as an industry, but again was quite stale. You had like the butter kissed popcorn, but that was kind of it. So they came in and really shifted that space. I suppose we talked about glasses before. You could talk about Jimmy Fairley. I mean, there's Ace and Tate now, isn't there? There's a few kind of competitors that have come up through that. But again, glasses was a niche that was very boring. It was like, we could go to your local opticians, you could go to a branch, say like a Specsavers, or you could go to, a department store and try and buy a pair of designer glasses, but then you'd have to put the lenses in and all the rest of it. Whereas they came, like Jimmy Fairley came in and kind of provided this alternative look of, wow, okay, well, we're going to provide this at a really decent price, and we're going to have a whole experience around it, and it's a brand, and it's a community, and people want to be part of, identifying with each other. Oh, those are a pair of Jimmy Fairley glasses. So there's a lot of value in market disruption. And personally, like, if I was going to start a new product-based business where we're selling, like, you're creating a product and you're selling it, market disruption is where it's got to be at. You have the best chance of being able to make something that is going to be substantial enough to be able to survive without these huge conglomerates taking your product and ripping it off, which inevitably is going to happen anyway. But in terms of building a brand and building a group of people who actually want to buy into it, market disruption is a way for you to do that in a very successful way. Now, one of the things that is really important as to why do those brands that we mentioned work and why are they successful is to do with their visual brand. It's to do with their differentiation. Their differentiation is often their brand, it's their customer service, it's their kind of access to whatever it is that you're purchasing, but it is their visual brand. And brand identity in the product space, I just don't think has ever been more important. I just feel like, and it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna give up. Like, I think it's just gonna keep going and going and going, because we've now got so many different verticals of viewing brand and different ways of experiencing what people are wanting to translate through a brand. So, like, previously, let's just say you had a TV advert. You had a 30-second TV advert in order to try and display a message of a campaign, the campaign itself, the product you're selling, the brand, and it was like all in 30 seconds. Now you've got these multi-layered, stringed, beautiful campaigns where you've got, maybe you still have a TV ad, but I don't think most people are not going for the TV ad, but let's just say you've got the TV ad, but you've got social, and then you've got some sort of board, like a campaign board still. And then you've got an in-person activation. And then you've got some sort of podcast sponsor. And you've got all these different layers that are talking to one another, that are building so many different touch points and so many identity kind of places for people, for businesses to really put a stake in the sand of to who they are, for the person on the other end to identify and say, they belong in my life, they fit with me. They're a really nice addition to that. And in order for that to work really well, the visual identity of your brand has to be solid. It really has to be clear, it has to be bold, and it has to stand out for somebody. A great example of that is Lucy and Yak, the clothing company. They have created such a visual identity that it's a huge community, and it's something that people are drawn towards, and they feel seen, and they feel like, yeah, that's for me. They've built something where, like, they've really took something that is like, well, visually it looks great, visually it's really clear, but then also there's this like whole belonging in the community thing that we've just discussed, which is really key and good. I suppose if we're talking about clothing, let's talk about Odd Muse, for example, which is a small UK-based clothing brand that has done very, very well in the last few years, and again is in a position where they've really identified what they're trying to do, who they're talking to. They're not trying to be everything for everybody. They're very much set on beautiful dresses, and they do other things, but the dress is their core thing of their collection, and they're very clear about who that girl is, who the Odd Muse girl is. So much so that it's very clear for someone who isn't that to know that, oh, okay, I'm completely over here, because that is not me. But that's what they need, they want. And they're building consistently great community with that. And then utilizing marketing in a way that actually is really beneficial for them. There's some really, and I hope that you're seeing from this, is like, product-based business is thriving. There are huge amounts of issues that you're going to come up against. There's huge amount of roadblocks. There's huge amount of things where you're constantly going to get a like bang, 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 bang of disasters that might occur. But there is also this real need for understanding how vast the opportunity is for getting it right. And I would say, like, the things we've discussed today, how much you get that bang on dictates the potential overall value of your business. Because let's face it, if you're building a product-based business, you're probably going to want to sell it at some point. Not always, but sometimes. If you're trying to build something that becomes sort of somewhat mainstream. But the value of that is going to come down to how much kind of garnered interest you can get at the beginning. And when I say the beginning, I mean like the first 5 years of just really refining that and really understanding like what is your offering. And also being so clear in that actually you're really clear on what you're not. You need people to be able to split in the middle and go, yes, it's for me, it's not for me. You can't really afford, I don't think, to have people in the middle who are just like, oh, okay, yeah, cool. That doesn't necessarily work as well. And I think that's really, really key for you to look at and think, okay, well, where do we want to sit? And then don't get carried away with feeling like you're shoehorning yourself somewhere, because actually, as I mentioned before, once you reach different stages of the business growth cycle, you can then spend time doing the other bits that you want to do that you feel like you've kind of lost or sectioned out. But it's really important that you get super clear on what is your product, what is your niche, how are you building community, how are you defining your brand, what is your model of selling? Like, is it a launch model? Is it not? Is it that there's going to be some sort of wild goose chase you have to go on to buy from you? What is your pricing strategy? Is your pricing strategy set up to actually provide you with a profit so that you actually can live and that you have a business and not sort of like this really expensive hobby? What is the kind of way that you're going to encourage repeat business? What is your reward strategy? How are you going to build reward into your business? Can you gamify it? How is community driven, consumer driven brand? What does that mean for the business? How are you going to encourage that? What does that look like? Are you a market disruptor? Where does the market get disruptive? At what point? What sector? What category? And your visual brand, where are you? What do you envision that being? What colors do you want that to be? What emotion do you want to instill in people when they come across your brand? I know this has been kind of like a whistle stop tour of an episode in terms of if you're launching a product-based business, but I wanted to keep it like really nipped in the bud of these are the things you need to focus on if you are going to launch. The other thing to mention is the day you actually launch and the month you do that and the lead up to it is so critically important. So if you are doing a product-based business, you need to start your launch marketing, if you want to call it that, 3 to 6 months before the day that you actually sell something, in my opinion. You want to have that consistently going on to build community before you buy. Do not attempt to do it and then just launch it and then be like, ta-da, here we go. Who are we selling to? Nobody. We've got nobody. Like, you've got to build that desire and build that momentum and build that community and those raving supporters and then continue that through. And I think if you're launching a product-based business, social media is your best friend. It is your absolute golden ticket to exploding it. And I think you have to get really, really clear on where do the people that we want to sell to hang out and what sort of thing do they want to engage with? What sort of thing do they enjoy? What sort of thing are they watching? Live shopping now is huge. So that 100% needs to be in your strategy. Live shopping, live video, how are you going to help people to want to buy from you consistently and they want to tune in, they want to watch, and it becomes this whole thing and you end up with personalities in this business and you build brands, almost micro brands and microcosms within businesses. Like, really, really take the time to think about what does a successful product-based business look like today? How do they continue to be successful? And why is that? And it will take you a long way. But product-based business is a hell of a lot of graft. It's a hell of a lot of work. It's not for the faint-hearted, but I think those people who decide to do it know that and they enjoy that, and it's the kind of hunger for why they do it. So if you are embarking on this, congratulations. I'm excited for you. It is very, very cool and very fun, and I hope it goes extremely well. If you want more episodes on product-based businesses, building them, scaling them, let me know and we can do some more. Send me more questions. Maybe we can do like a Q&A on product-based business specific questions. But yes, take care and I will speak to you soon. Bye.